northwest. A cold day, though, across the east, with that rain pushing in eventually to East Anglia in the southeast through the evening rush hour. Then things turn colder with showers again coming into the northwest. Those showers again, mostly rain at low levels, but some hail, some sleet and some snow likely on any kind of moderate hills really. So we do have another Met Office yellow warning for snow and ice continuing into Friday across the northwest of the UK. Scattering of showers elsewhere, but for many Friday will be bright again with sunny spells and a cold winds, with temperatures again struggling despite some sunny spells below average, 4 to 7 or 8 degrees Celsius. Staying chilly for the next few days.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll be getting into the things that have got you talking today. Now, the cost of living is something which is looking likely to skyrocket. Have you heard that phrase, heating or eating? I bet you have. Do you think the government should be getting involved and intervening when it comes to the electricity prices, the energy prices, or is it simply free markets? Also, we're talking about Tony Blair petition to get him stripped of his knighthood has reached over 700,000 people. Are you one of them that signed it? Do you think he should have that knighthood or not? And also, we'll be talking about testing changes with Omicron. Can't let a night go by, can I, without talking about COVID? But I wonder, are you confused yet? Are you following all of these testing rules? I'll have the latest on that. And I'll also be talking about Sadiq Khan's plans to decriminalise some Class B drugs. What do you think? Should Class B drugs be illegal? We'll have that and more coming up. But first, let's have a look at the news headlines.
Hello there, I'm Polly Middlehurst with your latest news headlines. COVID restrictions are being updated across parts of the UK. In England, pre-departure PCR tests for travellers returning to the country from abroad will be scrapped. And from next week, people who test positive with a lateral flow test who are asymptomatic won't need to take a PCR test to begin their isolation. That's the case in Scotland as well. The First Minister there, Nicola Sturgeon, confirmed Scotland will shorten its COVID isolation period from 10 to 7 days from tonight. Well, today Boris Johnson faced his first Prime Minister's question time of the new year. With the rising cost of living leading the debate, Angela Rayner, standing in for Sir Keir Starmer, following his positive COVID test, warned Millions of British workers are facing a further pay cut and a tax hike, with inflation at its highest level since the early 90s.
His government has failed to invest in long-term energy security. His government decided to let gas storages collapse. His government let the energy market run out of control. 27 energy companies have gone bust in the last year. And now household bills are going through the roof.
Angela Rayner. Well, Boris Johnson retaliated, saying record numbers of people are now in work, and he backed his party's warm homes discount, winter fuel and cold weather payments.
What the government is doing is supporting people throughout the pandemic. 2.2 million people supported with the Warm Homes discount, Mr. Speaker, worth £140 per week, which we introduced. Pensioners supported with the £300 winter fuel payments, Mr. Speaker. Cold weather payments worth £25 a week for 4 million people up and down the country, Mr. Speaker. That is what we are doing.
In other news, a man has been arrested under the Terrorism Act after a police car was attacked in Oldham in Greater Manchester. Police say a man approached the vehicle in the car park of the city's police station and threatened the officers inside it. The 31-year-old has also been arrested on suspicion of criminal damage and assaulting a police officer. 4 people have been cleared of criminal damage after pulling down the statue of Edward Colston in Bristol. The memorial of the slave trader was toppled and thrown into the harbour during the Black Lives Matter protest in June last year. Almost £4,000 of damage was caused. All 4 defendants admitted to being involved but denied their actions were criminal and said the statue itself was a hate crime against the people of Bristol.
That's one thing that's been a real big lesson for me, is just being able to take agency in my own life, and the fact that we all have ability to say how our space is decorated and who we venerate and who we celebrate. And one thing that we know now is that Colston does not represent Bristol.
In the United States, at least 13 people, including 7 children, have died in a house fire after smoke alarms seemed to fail. Firefighters battled to control the blaze this morning in the city of Philadelphia. It's believed there were 4 smoke detectors in the building, but police are saying none of them worked. The city's fire department said 8 people did manage to escape, with a child and an adult taken to nearby hospitals. And in New York, we're still waiting on a decision from the judge in the civil sexual abuse case against Prince Andrew. Yesterday it was heard that a ruling would be made pretty soon on whether or not it would be dismissed. The Duke of York's lawyers argue he's covered by a 2009 deal struck between his accuser, Virginia Giuffre, and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. She claims the prince sexually assaulted her when she was 17, 2 decades ago. Prince Andrew denies all the allegations. And the mother of one of the Manchester Arena bombing victims says her son would have loved the new Glade of Light memorial that opened to the public today. Martin Hett was one of 22 people killed at the Ariana Grande concert in 2017. The memorial is made from white marble in halo shape with the names of each of the victims inscribed upon it. Families like Martin's, who lost loved ones in the attack, have been able to put memory capsules inside the halo. That's all from me. I'm back in an hour. Now let's get to Michelle and Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, keeping me company tonight until 7 is my panel, PR consultant Alex Dean, author and journalist Joe Phillips, and filmmaker Kerry Dingle. Good evening to all of you. Hello. And you know what goes on Dewbs & Co by now, don't you? It's not just about us in the studio, it's about you as well. I like to know what you're thinking about. What are you talking about tonight? You can get in touch with me. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. If it matters to you, it matters to me. That's what we think here on Dewbs & Co. And I suspect, I know a couple of the stories that have got you talking at home tonight, that is for sure. Let's start though tonight with our first top story. Energy experts are predicting that millions of families will face huge fuel bill rises this year, which could force them to choose between heating their homes or eating. They say that the average annual fuel bill could go up by 46% when the energy price cap is amended in April. The Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, has met with energy leaders this afternoon and calls for the government to scrap the VAT on fuel, something that Boris Johnson has ruled out. Instead, Johnson attacked opposition plans to renationalise the energy sector at PMQs as a way of reducing the bills.
That's why this government is taking the tough decision to invest in the long-term future of our energy supply, investing in massively increasing our supply of renewables, but nuclear as well, Mr. Speaker, and that is the right way forward for this country. And I think it is absolutely, and it was Labour, of course, who completely failed to take those decisions, with the result that nuclear in particular fell away dramatically. And it is absolutely farcical that their answer today, Labour's answer today to the energy price rises, which my honourable friend correctly diagnoses, is to nationalise our energy. Yes, it is. Is it? Well, maybe they've changed their minds now, but it was. Maybe they've had a second. Maybe they've had a third. But their answer was to nationalise our energy sector and to send bills even higher, and that is not the way.
I must say, I did struggle a little bit to hear that clip then, and if you did too, Herm, I do apologise for that. Kerry Dingle, your thoughts? I mean, this coming year does look like it's going to be tough for an awful lot of people, doesn't it? It's not just the energy price rises. There'll be various different pinches to people's pockets. There's talk that the government should be doing more to help families. Do you think they should?
Well, I think, yes, they should, in the sense that it's appalling to think that only the rich can stay really warm. And it's really important, if you're elderly, to keep the heating on. I know my mum is already one of those people who'll keep the heating off and put a coat and extra jumpers on, but still won't be warm and risks all sorts of respiratory problems as a result. So, yes, I would like to see the government properly address the energy crisis, but more than that, we should recognise they've contributed, not as many people think, by failing to nationalise, which I just think is a nonsense in terms of cheaper energy. We know there are global factors increasing energy prices, but in the ludicrous net zero campaign that the government is behind, this is not going to be solved in the short term or even in the long term with renewables and throwing huge amounts of money at it. But if the government was serious about energy generation to meet the demand, we wouldn't have these fuel hikes. And if it was to embrace the gas beneath our feet through at least some fracking, as well as nuclear, we have the potential, if the fossil fuels could stop being made this F word, to solve our problems. And that's where I'd like to see the government go. Yes, cut VAT. That's a good thing for industry, in fact, because it doesn't really affect our individual consumer bills. As we only pay the lower levy. Cut VAT, yes, but that'll probably only shave 100 quid off. But I do think there has to be seriously, the government has to seriously address the energy shortage.
Alex?
So there's some relief coming, I think, for what Kerry was asking, from an unexpected quarter, in that over New Year I noticed that the European Union's Commission gave a statement about what energies it would consider to be green. That is to say, energies which they regard more positively, which won't be taxed as punitively and so forth. And both gas, which was sort of expected as the bridging fossil fuel, and nuclear, which is a big divider on the continent, were included on that list. So just at the time when the UK, having been better in some ways on energy than some of our neighbours, is falling behind, we see the European Union, quite surprisingly, given its targets on climate change, doing something that I think we should do, which is saying, effectively, if we want to keep the lights on, we've got to stop beating up those that do it.
Well, Boris Johnson, you may famously, may remember, famously promised that one of the reasons we'd got VAT on fuel was because of Europe, and that was one of the things that was going to happen after Brexit. Well, you know, you could get rid of the 5% for a start, even though, as Kerry rightly says, it barely touches the sides of domestic consumption. But it would be a start. You could have a look at the warm homes discount. You could perhaps rethink the £20 cut in universal credit. You could also have a look, as many people previously have said, you know, the cold fuel allowance, the winter fuel allowance that goes to all pensioners, regardless of their wealth or their needs, you know, nobody likes means-tested benefits, but actually if there are people who can't afford to heat their homes and there's somebody who can well afford to keep their homes, you need to look at the benefits that are available.
But why would you say that no one likes means-tested benefits?
I like means-tested benefits.
I like theirs. That's a great idea.
Well, but I mean, but politicians don't. They don't want to
because
bring
they think
in,
their voters don't like it.
They don't want to bring in something, and you know, and it's an attack on pensioners. So it's very politically dynamic. And what Angela Rayner said in the Commons today, you know, she is right in that not this government, but previous governments have ignored reports time and time again about the need to build up gas storage facilities and just ignored those reports and went ahead and closed them down.
We closed Rough, the one meaningful facility we had, which has reduced our capacity from months to weeks.
Which is bonkers, absolutely bonkers.
We agree.
So we've got no way of stockpiling a little bit of gas. And the other thing is that there needs to be a real proper, built-into, joined-up government policy about planning and building, that no more new build should take place unless it's green and efficient.
So I agree with some of that. I definitely agree we should take VAT off. And I also agree that was one of the things the Prime Minister, the now Prime Minister, said in the course of the run-up to our Brexit referendum. We said we could do it, and now we clearly, in my view, should do it. But the other thing I think about this interesting challenge that you were speaking about is that even if people don't want to have means-tested benefits, in part, and we can understand this, because you know, the Prime Minister, on the other hand, is looking at a tax cut, which will give a lot of help to people who don't need it, right? If you cut VAT, you're cutting VAT for everybody, which includes the very wealthy. So the other thing you could do, even if you don't go to means-testing benefit, is openly invite people who don't need it not to take or to return their winter fuel allowance.
Which has been a campaign for years and years and years run by
and now is the time to do it.
But actually, you know, if you use the argument that cutting VAT benefits the wealthy more than the poor...
Oh, I'm not. I do it. I cut that.
But that's what he was saying yesterday in his press conference.
Yeah.
But then that argument doesn't follow through if you then allow wealthy pensioners to get the 300
I completely agree, which is why I would actually raise the winter fuel allowance, but allow people to make a virtue signalling process of not taking it.
But do you think they would, though, Kerry? So the point here is Boris Johnson has been quite reluctant to kind of make cuts because he doesn't want very rich pensioners to, or even not even very rich, but, you know, moderately well-off people that could afford this to benefit from this. What they're suggesting, Alex, just suggesting here, is actually give people the opportunity to return it. Do you think people would?
Well, I think some might, but I think regardless, this is tinkering. I don't think in the long term this is going to solve the problem of, you know, low energy generation in the UK and global energy prices. It's not going to solve it. We can do some of that to help people out in the short term. I don't have a problem with that. I actually don't even care whether, you know, some richer people pay a bit less VAT. Yes, we can beg and plead to get the cash off them, and maybe we will, maybe we won't. But I am concerned that we are heading for increasing pauperisation, because environmental policies aren't just going to affect energy prices, they're going to affect all sorts, because we have anti-consumption politics, which uniformly, more than anyone else, pauperises working-class families.
Yeah, people are getting in touch with me already as well. John on the email has said, how out of touch is Boris Johnson, by the way, at PMQs? Some of you might have picked this up as well. At PMQs, he said that the warm home discount was worth £140 per week. He needs to wake up. The warm home discount is £140 per year. You're absolutely right there, John. He did indeed say that. Adrian says MPs are not bothered about the increases in energy bills because they don't have the problem in paying them. He says that he feels that the MPs just sit and laugh in Parliament and they are a disgrace. Someone else has said, when energy prices rocket this April, rest assured I will be sitting in the cold. Oh, dear me.
So there's two things about that. The first is the government is very lucky this crisis is coming in April and not in January when it's really cold. I mean, it would be much, much worse. But it's still going to be very bad if these prices spike anything like the kind of forecast we're seeing. And I disagree with your correspondent who says MPs don't care about it, because their electors care about it. And if these rises are anything like people are forecasting, and if people do wind up having to pay these rather than a fix being coming about, it'll be one of the biggest political issues in our country.
Politically, it's an absolute disaster. And it's another indication of a government being completely out of touch. And although you're quite right, Alex, to say that the rises won't come in until the spring, there will be people who will suffer and possibly die because they can't keep their houses warm, or they're frightened to keep their houses warm.
Well, there you go. I mean, we could rumble this debate on and on, but we won't. I'll give the final word to the viewer, Ian, who says the Chancellor will secretly be delighted, he says, with the sky-high energy prices because the government will pocket 5% tax on those eye-watering bills. He says he doesn't expect any changes from the government anytime soon. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking about Tony Blair. You will have heard a few days ago that he has got a knighthood. A lot of people very unhappy about this. More than 700,000 of them, in fact, have signed a petition now saying that he shouldn't have it. What do you think? We'll be having that and more after the break.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good evening. It is getting cold out there. It's going to be frosty tonight and frosty in the morning. A few fog patches as well. Wet weather then spreads east tomorrow with some snow mixed in, mostly over the hills. That's courtesy of this area of low pressure, but it's not with us yet. A bump in the isobars, a ridge of high pressure, meaning clear skies, and those winds continuing to ease down. So light winds, clear skies this time of night means a frost, a widespread frost forming already, and temperatures are only going to continue to fall. There'll be some fog patches forming as well, of course, parts of the Midlands and southern England too. But the main thing will be those temperatures below freezing, even in towns and cities, well below in rural spots. So a very cold start to Thursday, and then things turn wet across Northern Ireland, some snow on the hills, and then as this wet weather arrives across Scotland, some significant snow likely on the higher routes here, also across parts of Northern England. Some of the higher routes not very pleasant for a time through the course of tomorrow afternoon. We'll turn back to rain as we go through the day. Mostly rain at low levels and across the southwest, where it will actually eventually get to double figures. But East Anglia in the southeast staying cold, but largely dry until the rain pushes in here late afternoon into the evening. It's going to be followed by showers, and those showers turning wintry once more. So we do have another Met Office yellow warning for snow and ice from Thursday evening into Friday morning across northwest England, parts of Northern Ireland and western Scotland. The snow could really start to build up here, and as temperatures won't be as low, but still getting close to freezing, could lead to some icy conditions, particularly for Friday morning's commute as the showers continue to come in. Mostly rain at low levels and on the coast, but certainly over any kind of smallish hills, we will see some snow building up during Friday morning in those showers. A scattering of showers elsewhere, but for many central and eastern parts, Friday dry and bright with sunny spells, but it will be cold. Temperatures again below average and feeling colder with the wind.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs and Co. I've got to say, I was just reminiscing in the break there with Alex, because we had a good fun time, didn't we?
You are so
Before
naughty.
Christmas. We had a wonderful time on this show, so we did. The clips of it went quite viral, didn't they, online?
Yes, they did. I'm not sure I came out of it particularly well, so thank you very much for reminding me.
Yes, we'll tell you afterwards. It involved bodily parts and objects. I think that's the way we'll leave it there.
It also involved you not warning me that the story was coming up.
Oh, yes. Well, we were talking about rectums, as I remember it. We're not going to be talking about that tonight, but it was a very funny moment. It was one of the highlights, actually, of my GBNews last year.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, it made me smile. Anyway, I digress. Let's talk about COVID. Ugh, I know, I hear you at home saying boring. However, there was a couple of changes today, so it does need a little bit of a passing mention, to say the least, because, of course, we had the first PMQs of the year today. Boris Johnson was facing Angela Rayner, though, instead of Keir Starmer, because Keir Starmer is isolating after catching COVID again. I think it's something like his sixth time of isolating, not his sixth time of catching COVID, but his sixth period of isolation. Anyway, Boris was busily defending his plans to continue with Plan B restrictions in England, but changes were also announced to the testing rules. So people in England with a positive lateral flow test but no COVID symptoms will no longer have to take a PCR test from the 11th of Jan. And it's also expected that the government will stop asking for pre-departure COVID tests for people due to arrive back in the UK. Let's have a listen.
But thanks to the sheer size of the Omicron wave, we still need to take steps to ensure our testing capacity reaches those who need it most. So we will be suspending the need to do a PCR to confirm the result of a positive lateral flow test. From next Tuesday in England, if you test positive on a lateral flow device, you should just record that result on gov.uk and begin self-isolating.
Alex Dean, I mean, I've got to say, a lot of people will be forgiven right now for actually getting confused about where they stand with all this testing, well, day this, day that, day the other. But nonetheless, more changes today. Do you welcome them?
I do. I think it's good both to be able to report a lateral flow result and get your isolation started rather than having to wait for the formal PCR piece. And I welcome the slight relaxation on travel, which requires people it doesn't require people to get the test when they come back to the UK. It's worth remembering that the work from home advice from government is just that. So it's not been voted on in Parliament. It's a decision by the executive. They could reverse that as well, and I'm going to be paying attention, like many of us, to that. But the other thing I'd point to is some of the differences that exist between England and the rest of the country, the devolved regions. And what we've just seen from Scotland, from Nicola Sturgeon, is that it's OK to change your mind. Only a few days ago, Nicola Sturgeon basically called the reporter a moron for suggesting that you should go from 10 days isolation to 7. Now they've gone from 10 days isolation to 7. In England, the government's being urged to go from 7 days to 5. And I think, frankly, part of their reluctance to do that is because that they went to 7 quite so recently. They don't want to be seen changing things again and again. Sometimes it's OK to admit that things are better than you'd expected and to revise things. I get pilloried for saying it, people saying you've got to lock people up basically forever, but actually 5 days isolation seems all right to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have got quite comfortable with lockdowns and with things like furlough and staying at home, and I think there's a lot of shocks to people's systems coming when we eventually, hopefully, not too distant future, get out of all of this. Jo?
Well, I think a lot of people haven't enjoyed lockdown. I think it's caused a lot of people a lot of sadness, misery, distress and anxiety. And a lot of people have lost a lot of money. They've lost their businesses, they've lost their livelihoods. Not everybody who applied for furlough got it. And of course, people are now having to think about paying back what loans and bounce backs that they did get. I mean, if you were in the hospitality sector, for instance, your business has been up and down like a yo-yo, and the people who are working for you will have probably been on the minimum wage. They won't have had any security. They'll have probably gone to work in a supermarket or something, and now there are staff shortages. I mean, I think, you know, to be fair, we don't know what the impact so far of the Christmas-New Year period, because there's a 2-week lag, and I think the government will probably wait to see those figures and that data before they relax the isolation rules. But it is quite bonkers in many ways. If you are not ill, but you have tested positive, that you have to isolate for such a long time. And that's what's now causing the problems, whether it's train drivers or train staff or NHS staff or care home staff. And we've now seen today that care homes are closing their doors, which means they can't take any more people in. And that in turn is going to have a knock-on effect on hospitals who can't release people into the community.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, one of the things that baffles me, we're struggling so much at the moment with staffing shortages because of people isolating, etc., because of COVID. So goodness only knows how the NHS is actually going to cope when they enforce their vaccine, what I'm calling a vaccine mandate for their staff, because I think they'll lose thousands more staff and probably much more permanently than just an isolation period. Anyway, Kerry, your views?
Well, I think that's right. I broadly agree with Joe, although I don't think we need to wait for the data, because I think we've already seen it's a much milder disease. We haven't got the variant, we haven't got the deaths, we haven't even got the levels of hospitalisation, but we have got massive staff shortages. Now, everything says to any ordinary person, well then, no symptoms, 5 days isolation is fine. You know, you look at all the graphs and charts, they show that a lateral flow test is very good at checking your most infectious period, which is within 5 days. And so what's wrong with doing a test on day 4 and day 5 and then going back to normal?
Yeah.
You know, it's not rational, this thing.
No. Well, Sue from Dorset has got in touch on the email saying, I think the question is, Michelle, who would even take a lateral flow test if they had no symptoms? Why would anyone do that? Well, Sue, because, well, there's various reasons why people do it, but just for one reason, as a short example, is in people's workplaces, they have to test every single day in many cases, irrespective of whether or not they've got symptoms. And people like school kids, for example, they're having to test often. So there's a vast kind of array of reasons why people are doing that. And there's also a lot of arguments from a lot of people saying just stop with this mass testing, because if there's one way you're going to get out of a pandemic, stopping mass testing is a step towards it at least. Anyway, let's move on to a different topic, if we will. Tony Blair, you will have seen the news, I think it was at the weekend actually, that he has been given a knighthood. Well, there's a lot of people very unhappy about that. I think there was a topic about this earlier this week as well on this show, and at the time there was kind of rumblings that people were not happy. Well, things have accelerated since then. Various petitions have been put up saying that he should be stripped of his knighthood, and one in particular has got over 700,000 people calling for that knighthood to be removed. Of course, he was given this title by the Queen this year as part of the New Year's honours. The petitions are basically saying that because of his role in the Iraq War, he shouldn't be honoured in this way. Keir Starmer, of course, has defended Tony Blair, saying that he's earned the knighthood. Joe Phillips, should he have this knighthood, Tony Blair?
I think it's very difficult, isn't it? Because he is always going to be defined by his own fault by the Iraq War. And that means that everything else that he did, which, you know, some people might not agree, but there were many good things that the Tony Blair era and Tony Blair's government did during his period in office. The difficulty with this, of course, is it is a personal gift, a personal honour from the Queen. And it's the Order of Merit. It's the highest honour of chivalry. So there are all sorts of arguments about whether you can, whether we should overhaul the whole honours system, which obviously crops up every new year and every time there's a whole load of honours handed out. I think from Tony Blair's point of view, in order to save the Queen embarrassment, he should say, in order to save you embarrassment, Your Majesty, I'm, very grateful, blah-de-blah-de-blah, but I feel I can't accept
But they must have known there was this controversy though. Well, it's taken them years to award it.
Yes, and that is the other argument, Michelle.
That's the delay.
That actually 14, 15 years on, that's precisely why they've left it this long, because, normally it would be within a few years. Now, you could argue that he deserves it for 3 terms as Labour leader, many, many good things that they did, not least of all same-sex partnerships, and Sure Start, an investment in early childhood years and education. There are good things, but they have been completely obfuscated by the Iraq War. And of course, the people who went and fought and died and lost loved ones are quite rightly and understandably absolutely furious, and many of them are saying they'll hand their medals back.
Yeah, and Alex, Alex Dean, by the way, I forget, many of you might be listening on radio now, so just a reminder of my panel. So Alex Dean, PR consultant, I'll come to you. You know, Joe Phillips there, a political commentator, has just mentioned lots of the good things that Tony Blair did, whether it's Show Start, people might talk about things like minimum wage, etc. But I would say, well, that was his job. He was just doing his job. I don't understand this whole notion of you doing a job, you get paid to do your job, so what do you need honours for?
So it's a funny situation because you're right, I'm a PR consultant, you're a political consultant, but also you're a Labour person, I'm a Conservative person.
I'm not, actually.
Well, forgive me, I thought that you were, but certainly you're more of the left than me, let's safely say that. And you think Blair shouldn't have his knighthood, or at least should give it back, and I think he should take it, and I think it's fair enough. I have a view on this that pleases no one as a Tory. My view is that actually fair enough for a three-term Prime Minister to be knighted.
Yes, I broadly agree with that, but I think it puts the Queen in a very difficult position. And I mean, you know, we know about
the Queen's put the Queen in a difficult position. Well, because she knew that this was going to be the outcome, hence the delay, and they've chosen to proceed anyway.
Yeah, but, you know...
Can I just come...
Kerry Dingle, for the radio listeners out there, filmmaker extraordinaire.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Well, for me, Tony Blair is a loathsome militarist, warmonger, and more than anything, in recent times, anti-democrat in his attempt to get Brexit reversed. I've got no time for the man at all.
Oh, say what you think, Kerry.
Got a real problem saying what I think, obviously. But I do think this is all a bit of a nonsense, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, him running around with the Order of the Garter and a Garter or whatever the knighthood conveys on him. It's not the same as him being in the House of Lords, which I would be very angry about because I think the Lords should be abolished as an anti-democratic institution. I don't really care if he fannies around with honours and titles because actually the government and a lot of his government and unfortunately quite a lot of Tory MPs too all backed him on WMD and on invading Iraq, just as they did with his adventures, military adventures, which killed a lot of people in Afghanistan and in the Balkans. So I just think it's slightly posturing to oppose this particular award when there were so many people who are responsible for a terrible war that killed so many.
I also think you make a good point, Kerry, that, you know, there are some absolute dreadful people in the House of Lords. Some of whom have got there simply by buying it, you know, by donations to particularly the Conservative Party. So, you know, there are worse.
He's not going to the Lords. So that's
no, but that was Kerry's point.
I agree with it. It would have been different. If they suggested he should go to the Lords, I might be more of your perspective. But for me, an honour, a pure, simple honour that comes without any further responsibilities or anything, not a return to public life in that sense, for me it honours the office and not the man. And it honours that period of time, the long 10-year period, when this country was profoundly changed by political leadership. Now, as it happens, I disagree with a great deal of what he did. But it's not about the policy for me. It's about the fact that an appreciable percentage of this country believed in Blair, believed in Blairism.
And 3 times.
Voted for it and followed it through. Now, on the other hand, it's not about, when I say it's not about honouring the man, I think he's sought to enrich himself in the grubbiest ways after office, and he's sought to oppose democracy after office in the ways that you suggest. So I agree with that. But for me, it's an honour that isn't about his time after office. It's honouring the time in office, and it's as much an honour for the government that he led as it is for the man himself.
But why does the office, you're saying about the office needs to be honoured? This is the bit that I don't really agree with. These people are doing their jobs. They're paid very handsomely for doing their jobs. They'll be paid even more handsomely in the circuits afterwards, autobiographies and speeches and all the rest of it.
But for this particular honour, Michelle, you could say that about, you know, David Attenborough. You could say it about David Hockney. You could say it about any number of people who are in that very close, I think there's only 24 members. So you sort of have to wait until somebody dies in order for a vacancy to come up.
But I don't
Artists are only doing their jobs. Scientists are only doing their jobs. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
So you would
But
want
I'm
that.
against all of that. I think do your jobs to your best of your ability.
Your problem isn't with Tony Blair being knighted. Your problem is with having an honour system.
No, I have a bit of both actually. So my problem is I would pick up the honour system and shake it all around
and
a
switching.
bit.
When you argue A and we oppose you on A, you say, how about B? How about the honour system being bad then?
No, I'm not. So what I would say is I'm against two things. So I would pick up the honour system and shake it about. I wouldn't award people honours just for doing their jobs. The things about bravery and stuff like that, that's a different kettle of fish.
What about amazing teachers? What about amazing social workers?
Well, that's their job. You're supposed to, if you're going to be a teacher, you're supposed to be an amazing teacher. You're supposed to be an amazing social worker. But on Tony Blair in particular, I'm not overly comfortable with it. And I do think it is grossly insensitive at best, I'm being mild there, to the people whose children died in the various different wars. And by the way, we still feel the aftermath of the UK's meddling and tinkering all these years on. So no, I'm against both of the things.
I agree with Michelle. I think you are being clear, actually, and consistent. And I think there are people who have done great things, like that lad, Jimmy Olabunmi Adewole, you know, the lad who jumped into the river and lost his life to rescue someone back in April. People like that, incredible humanity and bravery and inspiration. Give the man an honour. The chap who's invaded all over the world and killed loads of people, not really. But I'm not going to get all hot under the collar over it because I think there were too many people backing him.
Yeah, and of course I do have to do the legal thing here and say that obviously Tony Blair was never found guilty of war crimes, etc. So all we are doing here is expressing our personal opinions. Lots of you are getting in touch and saying about this. Someone just said, Michelle, you're wrong. It's not the Queen that's done this. Well, this one actually is. This particular one for Tony Blair, this is the Queen, actually. That's Pete in Poole. He's got in touch with me there and said that we're wrong, but I don't actually think we are on this occasion, Pete. I think we're right. At least I hope we are. And who's this? Michael has said... actually, I won't say that. I was about to read you out there, Michael, and I stopped myself. I had the good foresight there. I think you know what I'm referring to. There's a real mixed response here about Tony Blair. Mick has said, I do not agree with this honour for him at all. And he will also now be able to capitalise on this and basically charge a lot more money for his appearances.
Well, look, this run, you both offered now this point about the Iraq War, which is interesting about a period of more than 10 years in office in which government does a lot of things. But government makes hard decisions. And you were inviting us to contemplate an alternative reality in which we had jeopardised our alliance with the Americans and left a dictator in place. And you are inviting us to believe that that world would necessarily, on your logic, be better. Better to the extent that we shouldn't grant a knighthood, which is, like whether you like it or not, customary to the holder of the office of Prime Minister. I don't know on what basis you say any of that.
But Alex, unfortunately, we know perfectly well that the basis for us going into Iraq...
the fact that they lied, yes. The fact that Alistair Campbell had a 45-minute dossier and so forth, yes, that's all terrible. But the idea that in the end the world would be a better place with Saddam in post and us having wrecked our alliance with the most powerful nation in the world...
Well, it's certainly not better, Alex, is it?
I think
it's certainly not better. You don't have any faith. Well... You know, you bomb Libya, which is Blair is responsible for.
No, that was David Cameron.
Actually, Cameron.
That was David Cameron.
The coalition followed on in his footsteps.
Right.
Made life far worse. Iraq is no great place. Thanks to our intervention, is it?
Again, another topic.
Easy choices,
another topic that can go on and on and on, but I'm going to have to call time on that one because I do need to head to a break. And coming up at the top of the hour, by the way, is Nigel Farage. And, of course, he'll be talking about the BLM protesters that have been cleared of toppling Edward's Colston statue in Bristol. Join me after the break.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, Loose Women turned COVID voice of reason. Denise Welch joins me for an exclusive interview on Omicron madness. Plus, GB News favourites Brendan O'Neill and Rod Little sound off on a topic that matters to you. And I'll break down more of the day's top headlines with my superstar panel. Social media sensation Adam Brooks, columnist and broadcaster Emily Carver, and political commentator Daisy McAndrew. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. I was just reading through some of your emails, and I've got to say, when it comes to Tony Blair, there are a fair few emails that I can't read out. Alison, however, has got in touch. She agrees with me. She says, you're absolutely right, Michelle. I agree with you that the whole thing needs a shake-up, and it needs to be not just for people doing their jobs. We talk, of course, of the honours system that we've just been discussing there. Anyway, let's move on. Just a reminder to all of you, my panel tonight, Kerry Dingle, Joe Phillips and Alex Dean, keeping me company until the end of the show. And let's talk about drugs, shall we? Because London's Labour Mayor, Sadiq Khan, has been criticised after he's backed a proposed pilot scheme which could decriminalise cannabis use in certain boroughs in the city. The scheme could see those aged between 18 and 24 found with so-called small amounts of cannabis being offered speeding course-style classes or counselling instead of arrest. His support for the pilot scheme has put him on a collision course with the Labour leader, Keir Starmer. Hello there, I'm back. I don't know what happened there, sorry about that. The London pilot, as I was saying, talking about the drugs just then, the London pilot could be announced later this month and could then be funded by the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime. What do you think to this, Kerry Dingle? You know, people that are caught with small amounts of cannabis, do you reckon they should be sent on a course or given a bit of counselling, or do you think they should be sent to jail?
I have to laugh just thinking about this. What would one of these cannabis awareness courses consist of? If you puff on this, you know, joint, you are likely to be eating chocolate all night, or, you know, have some sort of psychosis, it's insane. I mean, I understand Sadiq Khan's point, insofar as it's true, that a ridiculous amount of police time may be taken up with not particularly serious crime and stuff that isn't harmful to other people. But I think there are much more problematic waste of police time endeavours, like the police monitoring Twitter feeds and speech, which is incredible, you know, when there are real problems in terms of knife crime. I'm much more concerned about that. I don't think there's a connection. I know walking around Hackney in East London, where I live, you waft and smell these things. Even on my bike, I go, blimey. It's
and
so,
then do you pedal faster?
It's so
yeah.
expensive.
Yeah, she slowed down, yeah.
Pedal back a few times or whatever. I do think I can't see it as a big issue for me. If people want to, you know, get out of reality and not live in the real world and get off their heads on these Class B things, your choice. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's great for young people, but I don't think you should go to jail for it. And I don't like to think of the police spending a lot of time on it. And I do think Sadiq Khan's courses sound ridiculous.
But Joe, I mean, this is, you know, to me, you need to, when you're talking about drugs and stuff, you need to clamp down on the supplies. If you choose that something should be illegal, and the jury's out, there's a lot of debate and discussion around cannabis, whether or not it should or shouldn't be illegal, but at the moment it is. And if something's illegal, why don't you just clamp down harder on the suppliers?
Yeah, well, that's what I feel the same way about this as you do about the honour system. If you want to decriminalise it, then decriminalise it. But all the time you've got a supply of something which is illegal, it is coming from somewhere and it will be causing harm to people because, you know, there aren't very many groups of people who are supplying drugs who are just doing that, like making hash brownies or, you know, growing pot plants. They will be involved in a much wider scale of drug selling, drug supply, drugs, and that inevitably will be linked to other criminal activity, which could be people trafficking, it could be prostitution. It'll certainly be involving, you know, theft and things like that. So I think it's a really big issue. Make your mind up. If you want to have a decriminalisation of cannabis for personal use, then let's have a proper debate about it. But I think Kerry's right. I mean, a speeding awareness course is the worst possible suggestion that you could have for people smoking dope.
So I agree with a lot of that. Of course, it's not just a speeding awareness course per se. It's a new policy that will only exist in certain areas. And it seems to me as a miracle that what Sadiq Khan has done here is no matter where you are on the drugs spectrum policy-wise, he's found the worst possible policy to propose, which is that you have one area which will either be a magnet, which will attract people to go there because people get treated more leniently because of cannabis, or it won't make a difference, in which case, what was the point of it in the first place?
And I think this was tried in Lambeth, I think, actually, several years ago, in Brixton, when Brian Paddock was the police commissioner, but anyway, the borough commander or whatever he was, some years ago. I may have got this wrong, but it sort of is triggering a memory that they did have a sort of a light touch approach. And that's exactly what happened. A lot of people went to Brixton to smoke or to get drugs and stuff, knowing that they wouldn't be picked up.
That's right. And look, I know, of course, it's a different situation because the policy goes so much further. But examples like in Amsterdam show that if you have one area that is more permissive, let's say, than lots of the areas around it, it acts as a magnet, as a place to attract people to come to go and enjoy that. If you are going to go for decriminalisation, it's got to be the sort of Portugal scale. It's got to be the whole country. If you pick an area and say, let's do it here, it's the worst of all worlds.
But Kerry, you know, I am quite in favour of kind of innovation and trying things and doing things differently. So surely these kind of schemes, they do deserve a little bit of credit for, you know, will this work? What impact will it make? Let's try it. Let's go out there on a limb and see what happens.
Well, I'm all for innovation. I'm with you there, Michelle. But if the basis, you know, if this is predicated on too much police time being wasted, then you've still got police time being wasted.
That's not a good basis.
You have to charge, arrest, and get people to do one of these courses in the first instance.
Yeah, it's just the sentencing that would be different.
Even if the courses are carried out by a new business startup that's doing high awareness or whatever they want to call it, which sounds, sorry, but it sounds really ludicrous to me. And the other thing is, if cannabis as a Class B drug is really problematic, then don't decriminalise it. If it's not really problematic, you know, then what are we saying here? Exactly. I don't think it's really problematic that some people want to lose touch with reality. I think it's tragic, and I would counsel against it.
But the direction
of
policy
I don't think it's a massive problem.
Sorry, Kerry. The direction of policy in this country has been contrary to the one that Sadiq Khan is pointing in for some time. You remember, we tried taking cannabis from Class B to Class C and went back up again. And part of the reason that happened was that people have this kind of romanticised idea of, you know, the Beatles era of cannabis. You can't buy, I gather, cannabis that mild in the market anymore. It's
skunk.
mind-bendingly powerful
Exactly.
skunk.
And that is really causing very, very big problems, particularly amongst young people and older people as well, with huge psychological problems.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've either got to... The drugs issue is much bigger than this, and it needs a bigger and wider debate.
Yeah, Peter has been in touch and said when you're talking about cannabis, he's referencing the mental health impact. He said you should tell Sadiq to visit a mental health facility and see the large numbers of young men sectioned for their and others' safety, psychotic and very ill. Peter says he's been and looked at that, and in his words, it is devastating. Yep. So there you go. Let's move on to another topic. It's almost the end of the show. No worries, though. I will be back tomorrow. And that phrase, no worries, that I just used there. Do you see what I did there? I linked
good link.
Clever.
There you go. Well, no worries has been included on an annual list of irritating sayings by US universities. Other sayings include at the end of the day and wait, what? Which researchers said were meaningless and ineffective, baffling or irritating. And widespread social media use has been blamed for all of this, but I don't know, is no worries really that annoying? I mean, most people, lots of people, should I say, watching this will say, actually, any phrase that I say in my accent is quite annoying. I don't think they'll worry what it is. But what phrases get on your nerves?
I can't think of any, but I think your voice is very nice. Oh, go on.
Do you? Thanks, Sally.
The one that drives me absolutely insane is reaching out, because frankly,
oh, yeah, you're right.
unless you're a member of the Four Tops, there is no excuse.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
And it's particularly irritating when you get it in an email or a letter or something.
Yeah.
Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah.
What? And the
Let's
other
circle
thing,
back to it and then jump on a call.
And
what am I doing?
And as an old,
reaching out to circle back to jump on a call.
Journalist, deliver is the other thing that drives me insane.
What, deliver?
Deliver. You deliver babies, post and pizzas. You do not deliver projects.
You deliver a project outcome, though. I would say. I used to be a project manager, and that's what I would say. I would deliver a project.
I'm sorry.
I'm what about you, Kerry? I don't like people when they say, let's touch base. I don't want you to touch my base. Thank you very much. No.
She's gone to where we go.
Every time, she just can't let it go.
Yeah, no.
No worries. I don't have a problem with no worries. What I think is that historically, I don't know, I'm not a linguist, but surely, historically, language has been, and as more global we've become actually, language has become shorter and smarter and more lean. And if you compare it to, say, Shakespeare's English, or you look at, say, southern Italy, where it can take you half an hour to say hello in an incredibly flowery way, brevity is the order of the day, more sophisticated. So I haven't got a problem with that. And I'm sure social media and just saying LOL or whatever you do, if you tweet, I don't, is all well and good. What I don't really like is these people going around drawing up lists of what they think we should and shouldn't say.
Yeah, but it's just for attention, isn't it?
Yeah. Who are you?
You're right that language is global.
There are words I hate though, like empowerment, because I just think it's
what does it mean?
Meaningless.
Yeah, you don't empower other people. You know, power is something we fight for and take. And then I'm a bit with you on deliverance, but it's more. But then I go further, you see, and say I hate things like outputs and
but hang on, you just said why are all these people coming up with all these lists? And you've got a list of your own.
Yeah, but you can have your own words you hate.
You're not going to publish it, are you?
But I'm not going out telling people.
But that is very much a sort of a public sector. It goes along with mission statements, and it's empty, meaningless rubbish, you know. And actually, part of the problem is that people can't write very well. And
well, that's true.
And it's much harder, as any journalist will tell you, to write a very complicated story in fewer words than when you've got 1,500 words. And so give somebody a report to write and they will span it out.
Yes, let's say a few words in favour of no worries, though. Not only is it reassuring as a phrase, it's plainly, no matter how global language is, Kerry, it's plainly still associated with the Antipodeans. And, you know, just as these poor guys from Australia have turned themselves into a quasi-police state hermit kingdom over coronavirus, we're kicking them while they're down. But given the ashes, I don't mind.
No worries, mate.
Well, lots of you guys are getting in touch telling me the sayings that annoy you. Charlotte says, I don't like the saying money can't buy happiness because it's wrong. Yes, it can, says Charlotte. Philip says, I don't like it when people say, see ya laters. I've never had anyone say see you laters. Howard says, I don't like it when people say at this moment in time. And someone else, Angie, says, my bad. She also doesn't like it when people start every sentence with sir, and Patricia has just sent in saying exactly, I don't like it when people start the sentence with sir. So that is all we've got time for.
No worries.
Thank you very much for your company tonight and to my panel, and I will see you tomorrow, same time, 6 till 7. Have yourself a good evening in the meantime.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good evening. It is getting cold out there. It's going to be frosty tonight and frosty in the morning. A few fog patches as well. Wet weather then spreads east tomorrow with some snow mixed in, mostly over the hills. That's courtesy of this area of low pressure, but it's not with us yet. A bump in the isobars, a ridge of high pressure, meaning clear skies, and those winds continuing to ease down. So light winds, clear skies this time of night means a frost, a widespread frost forming already, and temperatures are only going to continue to fall. There'll be some fog patches forming as well, of course, parts of the Midlands and southern England too. But the main thing will be those temperatures below freezing, even in towns and cities, well below in rural spots. So a very cold start to Thursday, and then things turn wet across Northern Ireland, some snow on the hills, and then as this wet weather arrives across Scotland, some significant snow likely on the higher routes here, also across parts of Northern England. Some of the higher routes not very pleasant for a time through the course of tomorrow afternoon. We'll turn back to rain as we go through the day. Mostly rain at low levels and across the southwest, where it will actually eventually get to double figures. But East Anglia in the southeast staying cold, but largely dry until the rain pushes in here late afternoon into the evening. It's going to be followed by showers, and those showers turning wintry once more. So we do have another Met Office yellow warning for snow and ice from Thursday evening into Friday morning across northwest England, parts of Northern Ireland and western Scotland. The snow could really start to build up here, and as temperatures won't be as low, but still getting close to freezing, could lead to some icy conditions, particularly for Friday morning's commute as the showers continue to come in. Mostly rain at low levels and on the coast, but certainly over any kind of smallish hills, we will see some snow building up during Friday morning in those showers. Scattering of showers elsewhere, but for many central and eastern parts, Friday dry and bright with sunny spells, but it will be cold. Temperatures again below average and feeling colder with the wind.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Tonight on Farage, Jeff Hoon, who was Tony Blair's Defence Secretary, makes some pretty damning statements about the lead up to the Iraq War. We ask, should Tony Blair get his knighthood? We'll speak to Rabbi Rubenstein, who after 30 years of broadcasting on the BBC has left accusing it of anti-Semitism. And joining me on Talking Pints tonight, winner of The Apprentice in 2015 and serial entrepreneur Joe Valenti. But first, the news.
Good evening. COVID measures have been updated right across Britain. Pre-departure tests for travellers returning to England and Wales from abroad are going to be scrapped, and from next week, people who test positive with a lateral flow test who are asymptomatic won't need to take a PCR test at all to begin isolation. Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, also confirmed she'll shorten the COVID isolation period there from 10 to 7 days. That comes into effect tonight. And today, Boris Johnson has been defending the government's financial support for vulnerable people during the pandemic at his first PMQs today. Deputy Labour leader Angela Rayner stood in for Sir Keir Starmer following his positive COVID test. She warned millions of British workers are facing a further pay cut and a tax hike, with inflation at its highest level since the early 1990s.
His government has failed to invest in long-term energy security. His government decided to let gas storages collapse. His government let the energy market run out of control. 27 energy companies have gone bust in the last year. And now household bills are going through the roof.
Angela Rayner. Well, Boris Johnson retaliated, saying record numbers of people are now in work, and he backed his party's Warm Homes discount, the winter fuel and cold weather payments.
2.2 million people supported with the Warm Homes discount, Mr. Speaker, worth £140 per week, which we introduced. Pensioners supported with the £300 winter fuel payments, Mr. Speaker. Cold weather payments worth £25 a week for 4 million people up and down the country, Mr. Speaker.
Well, in the United States now, at least 13 people, including 7 children, have died in a house fire in Philadelphia after the smoke alarms in the building failed. Police say there were 4 smoke detectors, but none of them went off. The city's fire department confirmed 8 people escaped, but a child and an adult were taken to nearby hospitals. Here, 4 people have been cleared of criminal damage after pulling down the statue of Edward Colston in Bristol. The memorial of the slave trader was toppled and thrown into the harbour during the Black Lives Matter protest in June last year. All 4 defendants admitted being involved, but denied their actions were criminal. A quick warning, the following clip does have flashing images.
We all have ability to say how our space is decorated and who we venerate and who we celebrate. And one thing that we know now is that Colston does not represent Bristol.
The 4 defendants who were cleared today. That's your news update. I'm back in an hour. See you then.
Good evening. We will debate whether Tony Blair should be getting a knighthood or not in the light of some fresh revelations overnight from Jeff Hoon, who was, back at the time of the Iraq War, the Defence Secretary. But first, today in the House of Commons, it's been the first Prime Minister's Questions of the year. Boris Johnson, of course, the Prime Minister, up against, no, not Sir Keir Starmer. He's got COVID again. Sadly, in his case, clearly the booster didn't work. So he was represented by Angela Rayner. And it focused very heavily on the cost of living. That was the Labour attack line. But what I found particularly interesting was the debate around VAT. VAT on our heating bills. And this is what Angela Rayner had to say.
Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you what this Prime Minister is doing. He's increasing taxes to the hard-working people of this country. That's what he's doing. That's what he didn't promise in his manifesto, but that's what he's doing to the people. And I quote, Mr. Speaker, the poorest households spend 3 times more on their income on household energy bills than the richest households spend. VAT on energy bills makes gas and electricity more expensive. Not my words, Mr Speaker, but the words of the Prime Minister himself. When energy bills are going to be hiked again in April, any decent government would find a way to help British families. Even the Tory backbenchers have finally accepted Labour's call to cut VAT on energy bills. So will he finally stand up to his Chancellor and do the same?
Mr Speaker, let me remind, because she wasn't obviously listening to the previous answer, let me remind her the Warm Homes discount already, 2.2 million people supported to the tune of £140 a week. Pensioners supported with £300 through the winter fuel payment. The cold weather payments for 4 million people.
Well, here's the point. You see, the Labour Party there are saying cut VAT on fuel bills, and I agree with them. Funnily enough, as Remainers, they couldn't have done that because the European Union has set a minimum of 5%, which is where that levy is. And yet Boris Johnson, who came back at Angela Rayner and said to her very clearly, you've changed your mind. You're now advocating doing something that would only be allowed under Brexit. We now have the freedom to do this. The question is, Prime Minister, why aren't you doing it? Because the argument that's now being put by Number 10 is, if we cut VAT on heating bills, that means a lot of better off people will also benefit. Yes, Prime Minister, but it would be a very clear way of demonstrating a real dividend from Brexit. Goodness me, you never know. Next, the Labour Party may even start debating the 25% surcharge on our electricity bills for green subsidy, though I rather doubt it. But it was good that debate happened in the House of Commons because the cost of living and indeed the energy bills when they arrive this April is going to be a major political issue. And there's another issue that I've been talking about that explains in many ways why support is leaching away from the Conservative Party in the Red Wall, and it is on the issue of immigration. Now, very rarely does anybody in the House of Commons even discuss the subject, but Sir Edward Lee chose to in PMQs today.
Apparently the government is thinking of relaxing visa controls from India in order to get a free trade deal. Whilst a free trade deal is valuable in itself, we should not be held to ransom. Would he agree with me that our new working class voters who voted Brexit did not vote to replace immigration from Europe with more immigration from the rest of the world, any more that when they were told that they would take back control, we would lose control of the channel? So will he convince us that he's determined to connect to our supporters and control immigration?
Yes, Mr. I don't recognise the account he's given at all. We don't do free trade deals on that basis, and I can tell him actually that net immigration since we took back control has gone down, Mr. Speaker.
Well, net migration's gone down because of the pandemic, and when it comes to what's happening over the Channel, Boris Johnson did not have an answer. But they're two big debates that'll go on throughout this year, and they may well shape where politics goes. Now, a story that was out overnight. Jeff Hoon, who was the Defence Secretary at the time of the Iraq War, is publishing a book. The book, See How They Run, and it does include a remarkable statement that Tony Blair's Chief of Staff, Jonathan Powell, told his senior official to burn a legal document that was put forward by Lord Goldsmith, the Attorney General, and the advice was on whether going to war in Iraq would be legal. He was told to burn it. That is the claim made by Jeff Hoon. The newspapers report that this story came out in 2015. I don't remember ever seeing it before. Now, it should be said at the beginning, Tony Blair has been promoted to Order of the Garter, and all former Prime Ministers do get the Order of the Garter. And with that, either comes a knighthood or an earldom. But is Tony Blair fit and proper for this? And I ask this question because 750,000 people have signed a petition saying he shouldn't be knighted. Well, joining me now over the phone is Colonel Tim Collins, OBE, former British Army officer who led the Royal Irish Regiment into Iraq in 2003. Tim, good evening.
Good evening.
And we all remember that speech you gave on eve of battle. Now, Mr. Blair made the decision, and he was backed by Parliament to get involved in that Iraq war. And, you guys went off and did the very best job that you could. Are there really grounds to say that what happened there was illegitimate and that he's not deserving of being a member of the Order of the Garter?
Well, I think that one needs to go back slightly further, and that's to his involvement in the peace process in Northern Ireland, which had, by and large had been settled by Sir John Major and the Irish government. The difference Tony Blair made to it was celebrity-type spin, which actually watered down the agreement and has left us in the position we're in now. But where I really take issue with what Tony Blair did was that then we went to war on a dodgy dossier as bit part players and not pulling our weight in terms of assisting the coalition in advice. And the crucial piece of advice that certainly I saw before I took command of the Royal Irish, when I was serving with Special Forces at headquarters, Special Forces, the Iraqi army was the institution that we needed to look to hold Iraq together until a replacement, a democratic replacement for Saddam Hussein could be brought about. And when they disbanded the Iraqi army, they unleashed a form of terror which cost many lives, both Iraqi and, in our case, British lives.
But Tim, couldn't you argue, going back decades, perhaps even centuries, that British prime ministers in moments of crisis have made good decisions and made bad decisions, and that was a bad decision, clearly a very bad decision. But does it disqualify Tony Blair from receiving the accolade that all other former prime ministers in modern times have been awarded?
Well, I think that the real irony of it is that it's the Order of the Garter, which is a personal gift from the sovereign. And the sovereign is the institution that he sought so much to undermine with New Labour. We saw at the millennium how the Queen was made to be a prop at the New Labour celebration of he and Cherie Blair. And he's now coming cap in hand to accept it. And perhaps he'd be gracious enough to say to the Queen, you were right.
Well, I have to say, I do agree with that. I thought the millennium was very tasteless, and the role of the Queen, she must have been cringing with embarrassment at the way she was being treated. I do agree with that. Tim, tell me, as an Iraq war veteran, do you and many of your colleagues, do you feel bitter about that war because it was sold to you on a falsehood?
Well, I just feel very sad for the people of Iraq because they've been pushed into the arms of their unfriendly neighbour Iran, and they have no choice in that matter. I think that they will rise again, but it's going to take a long time. And there's thousands of people dead who didn't need to die. And I think that's the regret we have, and including our own people. OK, so finally, quickly, Colonel Tim, are you saying that Tony Blair should not get a knighthood? I'm saying that given the slings and arrows he threw at our monarchy, the way he behaved, that he should turn around and say, I'm not worthy of this, and I can't accept a gift from an institution which I tried so hard to demean. OK. Tim Collins, thank you very much indeed. And folks, you at home, I want your view. Does Tony Blair deserve this knighthood? GBViews at gbnews.uk. Right, or hashtag Farage at GBNews. Now, let's go to John McTernan, strategist, commentator, and of course, formerly Tony Blair's political secretary while he was Prime Minister. John, are you astonished by the scale of the row that's erupted over the course of the last few days about the knighthood?
Oh, look, I'm astonished at the number of people who want to criticise the Queen. It's her Order of the Garter, it's her award, and people who would otherwise, I would have thought, respected tradition, the tradition of granting this award to prime ministers, seem to object to it. And the lack of historical grasp, Tim Collins saying that Tony tried to undermine the monarchy. I think the Queen looks back on what he did support her during the death of Princess Diana and the aftermath of that, would say that he actually helped to strengthen the monarchy in a very difficult moment. But look, Tony always says it was the greatest privilege of his life to be the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom for two reasons. One, which I'm sure you'll agree with, it's the greatest country in the world. And the second is because it's the greatest country in the world, one of the things you can do is have any opinion of him you want and say it wherever you want. And he's always respected other people's views to criticise him. He's perfectly willing to defend his own view, his own position. He always has done. But he celebrates the fact that many people can criticise him and criticise the Queen even.
The argument here, I think, and I was making the point a moment ago to Colonel Tim Collins, is that prime ministers make decisions in crises, and some work out well, and some work